Hi, hi everyone, in English 104, Sal here. This is a new format for me, the video blog. So apologies for any hitches there might be and for having to stare at me for the next 3 to 5 minutes. But I'm going to try to answer some of the questions for today's blog. First of all, see if you can see that. What's my level of digital literacy? Um, I would say I'm fairly literate on a digital level. I wouldn't call myself a programmer or anything, but I'm familiar with social media, you know, word processing, so on and so forth. But I think on some level, I'm probably not too digitally literate. Um, Self in the article that Self wrote, she's wondering if we are paying attention to the social and economic and pedagogical implications of how we use technology. And I don't can't say for sure that I am. Of course I can use the media, but do I really think about what it you know implicates or anything? No, not as often as I could. Um, and I think I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, talks about how being comfortable with technology doesn't necessarily mean understanding or critiquing its societal effects. And she says there's two levels. There's activity based, which I do, research, typing, Google search, whatever. Anybody can do that. And then there's literacy practices, which are a little bit more complicated. They understand, the larger societal implications of technology use, and that's something I don't keep in mind too much. And maybe that's something to consider more. Um, so I hope I answered the question there. If not, if anybody wants more elaboration, it would be great, to get a video comment or regular comment, whichever. So let's move on to question number two. Talking about elements and digital rhetorics and how these are different from the rhetorics as we've talked about so far. For this, I'm going to turn to Sheridan's article. Well, Sheridan and friends. And one of the things about digital rhetorics that's different from non-digital rhetorics is that it's not concerned only with who's speaking or who's writing, but also with design and production and distribution. Because it's not bound by paper or speeches anymore. You can put a blog up online and the whole world can see it, whereas that would have been unthinkable before. And it's more of a symmetrical access as they discuss. There's more of a many to many distribution as opposed to few to many. So it's a more of a flow of information, which we might not necessarily get in traditional rhetoric. You give a speech, or you convince the audience or what have you, and it's just kind of a one-way thing. And so there's a lot of things we can do with multimodality that we might not be able to necessarily do with written or spoken rhetoric. For example, videos, as they discussed. There are some things that are not that different. Digital rhetoric, much like written rhetoric, is still planned. It's still adapted to an audience. It's responsive, it's persuasive, but it just takes into account all these other aspects. Of how are we going to get this message out? What's our appropriate venue? Um, Stupid example, but am I going to convince as many people on Twitter as I would, through a blog? And if my analysis seems a little flippant, I guess that's a good segue to future class discussions, because this is all very interesting, talking about some of the new forms that, for example, we can replace the essay with. We mentioned that in class briefly. So I'd like to know, what are some of the new forms? What's it? Can we do digital essays? Because the regular essays done some good service, so we're gonna need something to replace that that's gonna be just as effective. So, what are these new forms going to take? What are going to be the genres? And what are the rules that are going to govern them, if any? Otherwise, we're going to have chaos in the academy. And another question that I think is worth exploring in class is if there, I forgot who it was. Excuse me. I believe it was Curtly and a few others. They're talking about the gap between, or the correlation between class and lack of access to technology. And I'm kind of wondering if this is a situation that still exists, if it's been remedied in the last couple of years since maybe these articles have been written. And, if it still exists, how can we address that problem? So that's my video blog. Thank you for your patience. And, I look forward to any responses. And best of luck with the work. I'll see everybody tomorrow.